After the loss of the Death Star, the Empire pivoted their fear campaign to a new class of Star Destroyer with the Executor. This super Star Destroyer was put in charge of a fleet called Death Squadron. This transmission will cover the purpose and creation of Death Squadron, how and when it operated, who commanded it, which ships mattered, and how Legends expands upon its story. In the wake of the Death Star's destruction, Darth Vader is given a personal armada to hunt down the Rebel Alliance and crush it before it could rally. The head of Death Squadron is a first-in-its-class Super Star Destroyer called the Executor. This ship was actually intended to fall under the command of General Cassio Tag. After Yavin, a man called Dr. Silo attempts a coup, which Vader stops, earning him the ship as a reward from Palpatine. Tag was punished for not stopping the coup himself and put under Vader's command. Vader force chokes Tag to death soon after. Vader's new flagship led 5 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, 3 Imperial I-class Star Destroyers that received upgrades to make them more formidable, the Conquest, Ultimatum, and Vader's former capital ship, the Devastator, 3 Imperial II-class Star Destroyers, the Avenger, Stalker, and Tyrant. Okay, you didn't hear that wrong. I did name 6 additional ships when I said there was only 5. Vader had the power to requisition any Imperial ship to join Death Squadron as he saw fit at any time. Only Palpatine had the right to override him. Stalker was one such ship. Death Squadron moves around the galaxy, intimidating any system that it's in with Imperial law, and the known presence of Darth Vader to make things that much worse. Even though there was only one Death Squadron and the galaxy is a massive place, just knowing that it was out there could often deter smaller pockets of rebellion from acting out. You may get away with a raid or two, but if Death Squadron showed up in your system, it was all but a guarantee that you would be wiped out. Each capital ship in the squadron had its own command line through standard Imperial flag officers. These officers kept their respective ships and crews running, but they all had to answer to Vader, no questions asked. Having Vader directly ruling over every person in Death Squadron created a unique culture for the fleet: impatience, direct pressure, and public consequences that were more often than not severe for any failure. A year or so after the Battle of Yavin, the rebellion was still licking their wounds. They were hiding out in the Mako-Ta Space Docks while looking for a new base that they could settle into. The Alliance is betrayed by Queen Trios of Shu-Turan, who gives them up to Vader. Death Squadron jumps into the system and obliterates anyone and anything in its path. The Alliance is forced to scatter to save their lives. Much of the remainder of their fleet is destroyed, and those who survived are largely scattered. This is covered in the very appropriately named arc, Hope Dies, from Marvel Comics. Project Swarm sees the Empire deploy thousands of Imperial probe droids all around the galaxy. One of these found information that led to the discovery of the Rebel base on Hoth. Admiral Ozzel brings the fleet out of hyperspace too close to the planet, which warns the Rebels of the Imperial's presence and ruins any chance at a surprise attack. Vader and Palpatine had been watching Ozzel anyway, they didn't trust the guy. This last slip-up was one too many for Vader, who called Ozzel from one ship to another, and through the video call crushes Ozzel's windpipe with the Force, choking him to death. Firmus Piet was standing directly next to Ozzel and gets the promotion on the spot. The Rebels use their early warning to raise a planetary shield, making a bombardment from space impossible, so Death Squadron's mission shifts to a ground assault with the fleet staged as a blockade to block any nearby hyperspace corridors. If you're getting value or entertainment out of any of my transmissions, it would mean a lot if you would join the Remnant and subscribe. We can now go over a fun bit of trivia that can also help clear up a common misunderstood critique of the Battle of Hoth. As the Rebel troops are trying to evacuate their personnel from Hoth, they need to get past Death Squadron. Hoth is a remote planet surrounded by an asteroid field. The hyperspace lanes in and out of Hoth are very limited, which is why Death Squadron is able to blockade an entire planet so easily. It's also why the Rebellion set up a V-150 Planet Defender ion cannon. This cannon is so large that it's basically installed into the very landscape of the planet. The cannon fully disables the Tyrant, which allows a number of GR-75 convoys and their escorts to safely escape. So the little bit of trivia that we went over is that the Star Destroyer that we see in The Empire Strikes Back being disabled is the Tyrant. The misunderstood critique that I'm trying to correct is people asking why the Rebels didn't just fly around the planet and leave from the other side. They had to be lined up with a hyperspace corridor to get out of the area. With the Rebellion largely successful in escaping Hoth, Death Squadron pursues them. The Millennium Falcon becomes the object of Vader's fixation. When the Falcon throws itself into an asteroid field, the Imperial officers want to call off the chase. Vader, as I already explained, gets final say in all matters. the massive ships of Death Squadron enter the asteroid field and suffer heavy losses. On top of the natural occurring losses due to the asteroids, the Falcon slips away from Captain Lord Needa and his ship, the Avenger. Needa takes responsibility and Vader kills him for the blunder. These are exciting scenes in the movie, but also serve as an example of the support those serving under Vader gave. Even if it was out of fear alone, it also shows the Empire's philosophy on everything and everyone, with very, very few exceptions, being expendable. Death Squadron is also used to back up Vader's not-so-vague threats against Lando Calrissian and Cloud City. Vader on his own is intimidating enough as he storms through the city and tells Calrissian what their agreement is, but the Super Star Destroyer and its remaining support craft orbiting above the floating city force him to comply, since it's not just his life at risk, but potentially the entire city and everyone in it. Roughly a year later, the losses of Death Squadron have been filled, and it's now the core of the Imperial battle line above Endor. The Executor looms over the center of the fleet. When the Alliance falls into Palpatine's trap, the ships and the functional second Death Star create a kill box. The Rebels not only stand to fight, but find a way to use the size of the Star Destroyers against them. The capital ships have a hard time targeting starfighters at very close range. Admiral Ackbar, aboard Home 1, is leading the battle and instructs all fighters to concentrate their fire on the Executor. Bringing down the largest ship would do the most damage and shake the Imperial's confidence. The Rebel pilots probably don't feel great about their chances, but as we've been told, rebellions are built on hope. The Empire's greatest flaw is their arrogance. It makes them blind. They think because their ships are bigger, no one can touch them, so much so, they don't put the care that they should into its defenses. We saw it with the Death Star, and the same concept is used against the shield generators for the bridge of the ship are taken down. Before a successful attack run can be made on the bridge, Green Leader is shot down himself. With his life already forfeit, Arvel Krynid points his crashing A-Wing at the center of the Star Destroyer's bridge and kamikazes it, killing the command staff and destroying the primary controls. Gravity takes over and the massive Star Destroyer impacts on the surface of the second Death Star. The Imperial line breaks as the Rebel ground team destroys the Death Star's shields, allowing the assault on the second Death Star, which was the whole reason why they showed up to Endor in the first place, to be underway, which successfully destroys the battle station. Jumping over into Legends, as Death Squadron's exploits can clearly be seen in George Lucas's original trilogy, the unshakable foundation for all of Star Wars, Legends doesn't differ too much. The size of the squadron is increased by the time the Rebels get to Endor, and instead of 5 Imperial-class Star Destroyers flanking the Executor, there are reports that go as high as 11. More familiar names like Avenger, Tyrant, Stalker, and Accuser are part of this version, as well as Legends ships like Ithamar's Fist, Pride of Talandria, Relentless, Death's Hand, Adjudicator, and even the Chimera. If that one's familiar to you, it's the ship that will eventually be commanded by Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I guess now with how things are going with Thrawn, the Chimera is no longer just a Legends-only ship as it's been brought into canon. Ship rosters and counts vary by source in the expanded universe. RPG books, novels, and reference guides don't always agree on the details, but the general idea is clear. Legends shows Death Squadron operating between major movie encounters. They systematically tighten the noose around the citizens of the galaxy, one sector at a time. The Death Star was definitely an impressive accomplishment, and destroying Alderaan was a show of force that no one could match. But the terror of the battle station was short-lived. I've often wondered, and I know many of you have the same question as you've commented and asked it through past transmissions, what if the Empire made multiple versions of Death Squadron and poured all of the Death Star resources into Super Star Destroyers? Even more terrifying, what if they learned from past failures and weren't so arrogant about their own strength? Tyranny could have ruled the galaxy far longer than a couple decades. Check out this transmission next for more on the Executor.